The Mafia boss came to reclaim her, but she was already protected in the vampire king's arms, safer than she'd ever been. In the city's deadly night, two empires collide, the underworld's power and the vampire throne. Now it's not just love at stake, it's her freedom, her fate, and who survives the war to claim her. I'm not sure when my life became a chase scene, but I remember the moment it stopped feeling like mine. It happened on a winter night under stained glass, with a man who looked like a myth and held me like I was real. Snow drifted outside the cathedral's broken arches, turning the city lights into soft, trembling halos. Inside, old stone and candle smoke mixed into a scent that made every whisper feel ancient. My shoes scraped the marble once, and the echo sounded like a mistake. Behind the doors, engines waited. Men waited, the kind of waiting that didn't run out. Stay close, a voice murmured, low, calm, almost too gentle for the shape it came from. He stepped out of the shadows as if the darkness had been saving a place for him. Tall, pale, silver hair catching what little light existed, eyes a deep red that should have terrified me but didn't. His gaze didn't pin me down, it didn't measure me like property. It simply noticed me like I mattered. The Vampire King. People said the title like a joke when they wanted to sound brave and like a prayer when they didn't. But standing in front of him, I felt the truth of it. Not power that shouted, but power that didn't have to. You can breathe, he said, as if he could hear my lungs refusing to move. No one is hunting you in here. No one, I managed, my voice thin. You're not exactly no one. He lowered his gaze, respectful, careful, like he didn't want his attention to become another trap. I won't pretend my name is harmless, he said, but I won't harm you. My hands shook, not from the cold, from the memory of warm hands that didn't ask, the kind that called itself love while it tightened into a fist. Outside, a car door closed, another. Lucien listened without turning his head. They're close, he said. My throat tightened. His name is Marco De Luca. Saying it made the air taste like metal. The Mafia boss with the public smile and the private storms. The man who made promises sound like gifts and turned them into chains once you said yes. Lucien stepped closer and I felt something impossible warmth, like he carried a quiet hearth inside him. He didn't reach for me. He waited, hands open at his sides. If you want me to fight for you, he said, I will, but I won't decide for you. I won't claim you to protect you. That is not protection. That is another cage. Well, something in my chest cracked. I'm tired, I admitted, and the words came out like a confession. I'm tired of being chosen like an object. Lucian's expression softened like candlelight easing across stone. Then don't go back. A hard knock thundered through the cathedral doors. Another, the lock rattled. Elena, Marco called from outside, smooth as velvet over steel. I know you're in there, come out and we can talk. Talk, the word that always came before the trap. My knees threatened to fold. He'll punish my father, I whispered. Lucian's eyes sharpened with recognition, like he already knew that was the lever Marco would pull. Your father's name, he said softly, is Rafael Serrano. I stared. How do you know that? Because Marco's reach is not only in your world, Lucian said, and because you are not here by accident. The lock gave with a crack. The doors began to swing inward. Lucian leaned close enough that his voice became a secret placed gently in my hands. Whatever happens next, he said, do not offer yourself to save anyone, not your father, not me, not even your own guilt. Marco's silhouette stepped into candlelight, smiling like he'd already won. Then he lifted something from his coat, small, familiar, devastating. My father's old watch. Marco's smile widened. Hello, Your Majesty, he called to Lucian. I didn't come for a fight. He held the watch up like proof of ownership. I came for my leverage. And the way Lucian's calm titan told me this wasn't just a chase. It was a plan. The cathedral felt smaller with Marco inside it, like the stone walls had learned to fear him long before I did. He walked with the casual confidence of a man who believed doors existed to open for him. His suit was perfect. His smile was practiced. His eyes were the only honest part, cold, measuring, amused. Two men followed him, stopping near the entrance as if they'd been trained not to disrespect the holy place, only to use it. Marco held up my father's watch again, letting it glint in the candlelight. "He's fine," he said, as if he were talking about a car he'd borrowed. "A little stressed, but alive because I'm not unreasonable." Lucien stood between me and Marco, still as a statue, but not theatrical. He didn't spread his arms or raise his voice. He simply occupied the space like a boundary. "You brought a human into my sanctuary," Lucien said, calm enough to be frightening, "and you call yourself reasonable." Marco's smile widened by a fraction. "Your sanctuary, right, that's what we're calling it now." He turned his gaze toward me like Lucien wasn't even there. "Elena, come here." My body reacted before my mind did, an old reflex trained by consequences. I took a step, then stopped. The moment I stopped, my heart hammered as if I'd committed a crime. Lucien didn't touch me, he didn't pull me back. But his voice wrapped around me like a steady hand on my spine. "You don't have to obey him." Marco chuckled softly. "You hear that? He's teaching you new habits, how sweet." Then Marco's expression shifted, the sweetness falling away like a mask. "Let's not pretend this is romance," he said, directing the words at Lucien. "This is business, she belongs to me." Lucien's eyes didn't flare, they didn't harden into threat, they filled with something more unsettling. "No one belongs to anyone," Lucien said. "Not by love, not by fear, not by contract." Marco lifted the watch and clicked the clasp open with practiced ease. "Contracts are real," he said. "Love is the story people tell themselves while they sign." My mouth went dry. "Where is my father?" Marco's gaze stayed on me, and for a second, something almost tender flickered, like he remembered how to be human and hated the memory. "Safe," he said. "Warm, fed, he's watching a game on TV right now. I even got him tea, the kind he likes." The casual kindness felt worse than cruelty. It meant he was proud of his restraint. Lucien spoke again, quieter now. "Let him go." Marco's laugh had no warmth. "You misunderstand me, Your Majesty. I'm not negotiating with you." He nodded toward me. "I'm collecting." Lucien's jaw tightened, not with rage that wanted to destroy, but with restraint that hurt to hold. "You want leverage," Lucien said. "Take mine, release her father, and I will give you what you came for." Marco's eyes sharpened. "Your words are expensive." "I will offer you an oath," Lucien said, and the cathedral seemed to listen. "One that binds my name." Marco's men shifted uneasily, like even they knew there were things you didn't toy with. Marco, however, looked delighted. "An oath from the Vampire King," he mused. "That's a rare currency." I heard my own voice before I fully understood it. "Don't." Lucien's head turned slightly, just enough to show he'd heard me. His expression didn't say "I'm doing this anyway." It said "I'm choosing and I'm responsible." Marco watched the exchange and smiled. "There it is," he said softly. "That look, the kind of devotion people die for." Lucien's voice stayed calm. "Release Rafael Serrano." Marco tapped the watch, then did something unexpected. He pressed a small catch on its side. The back snapped open, revealing a folded piece of paper tucked inside, creased, hidden, deliberate. My breath caught. That's my father's watch." Marco held the paper up, not letting me see it. "He had secrets," Marco said, "even from you." Lucien's gaze fixed on the paper, and something old moved behind his eyes, recognition again, sharper this time. Marco noticed, of course he noticed. "Ah," Marco said softly, satisfaction curling in his voice. "So you do know, good." He slipped the paper back into the watch and closed it with a click that sounded like a lock. Then Marco spoke the sentence that changed everything. "I invoke the midnight accord," he said, clear and formal, like a man reading a verdict. By your own law, Lucien Vale, you owe me a debt. Lucien didn't flinch, but the air around him went taut like a rope pulled tight. I looked at Lucien, panic rising. What is he talking about? Lucien's eyes stayed on Marco, and the compassion in them didn't disappear. It just got heavier. I made a promise, Lucien said quietly, a long time ago. Marco smiled like a door finally opening. And tonight, he said, you will pay it. The cathedral candles flickered as if they'd grown afraid of the words hanging in the air. Marco didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He held the room the way a hand holds a throat, firm enough to remind you it could tighten. Lucian's expression remained controlled, but I saw it in the smallest places. The stillness of his shoulders, the careful way he breathed, as if even breath could become a weapon if he let it. The midnight accord, I whispered. What did you promise him? Lucian didn't look at me right away. When he finally did, his eyes weren't red with threat. They were red with something that looked like regret lived there. I promised peace, he said softly, when violence would have been easier. Marco leaned against a pillar like he owned the cathedral now. Tell her the part where your promise protects me, he said. Tell her why you can't touch me. Lucian's voice stayed steady. There was a time when my kind and yours were moments away from tearing this city apart, he said. Marco's family had power, weapons, influence, and they were preparing a hunt. Marco's smile turned sharp. My mother had scars you couldn't imagine. Lucian nodded once, acknowledging pain without excusing what followed. I met Marco as a younger man, Lucian continued. He was not the king of anything then. He was angry and he was terrified and he thought cruelty was armor. Marco's eyes flickered just once at being seen too clearly. Lucian's gaze returned to me. I offered him a bargain, he said. I would keep my world hidden. I would restrain those who wanted war. In exchange, he would prevent a hunt that would have killed humans and vampires alike. I stared, and now he says you owe him. Oh, yes, Lucian said, because I sealed it as an oath. Marco lifted the watch again. And oaths have clauses, he said. Here is mine. You will not interfere while I reclaim Elena. You will not shelter her. You will not. He glanced at Lucian's hands, then back up with a smug half-smile. Touch her. My stomach turned. It sounded less like business and more like spite. I found my voice through the fear. I'm not an object to reclaim. Marco's eyes softened in a way that once fooled me. No, he said, gently cruel, you're an investment, and you walked off. Lucian's jaw tightened. He looked like a man holding back a storm not because he couldn't release it, but because he refused to become it. Is there any way around it? I asked, turning to Lucian, hating how much I needed the answer. Any loophole? Lucian's voice dropped. There is one, he said, but it requires your consent. Marco laughed, delighted. Careful, your majesty. Explain it wrong and she'll think you're offering her another cage. Lucian didn't glance at Marco. His attention stayed on me, and it was almost painful how gently he spoke. In our law, he said, there is a protection that no human contract can override and no vampire oath can breach. I swallowed. What is it? A chosen bond, Lucian said, and the words sounded like reverence, not possession. Not ownership, not a claim, a vow of mutual guardianship, equal, voluntary, breakable by truth. My skin prickled, a vow, a bond. Even the softest sounding cage was still a cage if the door locked. I forced myself to meet his eyes, and what do you get out of it? Lucian's expression didn't change, but something in him did. Like he'd been waiting for me to ask that question because it meant I was thinking like a free person again. I would be responsible for you, he said. In a way I cannot take lightly. I would owe you honesty, safety, respect, and if I failed those things, I would lose the right to stand beside you. Marco clicked his tongue. He makes it sound like a fairy tale. Lucian finally looked at Marco then, and the calm in his gaze was sharper than a knife. It is not a fairy tale, he said. It is work every day. I looked at the cathedral floor, at the marble veins like frozen rivers. My throat felt too small for my heart. I don't know you, I whispered. Not really. Lucien nodded, then asked me anything. The invitation stunned me more than any threat. Marco had never offered me questions. He offered me outcomes. I asked the thing I was most afraid to know, why me? Lucian's breath left him slowly. Because I knew your mother, he said. The world tilted. My mother died when I was little. Oh yes, Lucien whispered, and it was not an accident. Marco's smile thinned. Oh, we're sharing family secrets now, how intimate. Lucien didn't rise to it. He kept his gaze on me. Your mother came to me once, he said. She begged me to keep you away from this war. She feared both our worlds, and she was right. My chest tightened. How did she know you? Lucian's voice lowered, as if the cathedral itself deserved privacy. Because she saved my life, he said, and I promised her I would spend mine making that sacrifice mean something. My eyes burned. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to doubt him. I wanted to be nowhere and everywhere all at once. Marco clapped softly, mocking. Touching, he said, but we're out of time. He nodded toward the doors. Elena comes with me now, he said, or Rafael Serrano's tea becomes something less pleasant. The threat wasn't graphic. It didn't need to be. My mind filled the blank spaces with terror. I turned to Lucien, shaking. If I bond with you, I whispered, will you keep my father safe? Lucian's eyes softened with pain. I will try with everything I am, he said, but I will not use you as a tool to purchase someone else's life. You are not currency. Well, that sentence, meant to protect me, made my stomach drop. Well, because it meant I still had to choose. I took a breath that felt like swallowing glass. Then I stepped forward past Lucian's boundary toward Marco. Lucian's voice caught raw for the first time. Elena. I didn't look back because I wasn't sure I could keep walking if I saw his face. I won't let my father pay for my freedom, I said, and my voice shook but didn't break. Not tonight. Marco's smile returned victorious. Lucien didn't move to stop me. He honored my choice, and that somehow hurt more than being dragged. As Marco's hand closed around my wrist, firm, familiar, I felt Lucian's gaze on me like a silent promise and a silent apology. Then the cathedral doors swallowed us into the cold. And behind me, Lucien whispered words I felt more than heard. Come back, he said, when you are ready to be free. Marco's world smelled like polished wood, expensive cologne, and control. His mansion sat above the city like it had nothing to hide, but every hallway felt designed to remind you who held the keys. He didn't drag me, he didn't shout, he didn't need to. He guided me through security like I was returning to my proper place, and the people around him treated my presence like proof of his power. Their eyes didn't linger, they didn't question. They simply absorbed the message. He always gets what he wants. My father was in a sitting room with a blanket over his knees and a cup of tea on the table. He looked tired but unharmed. When he saw me, his face collapsed into relief so intense it made my eyes sting. Elena, he breathed, standing too quickly. He pulled me into a hug, hands shaking. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I held him like I'd been holding my breath for years, and finally remembered how to exhale. Marco stood in the doorway, watching like an audience. See, he said pleasantly, I'm not a monster. My father's jaw tightened. You don't get credit for not hurting someone, he said, voice hoarse. You get credit for letting them go. Marco's smile didn't reach his eyes. I'm considering it, he said, like freedom was a tip he might leave if the service impressed him. Later, when my father was distracted, when Marco's people escorted him gently to a guest room, Marco walked me into his office. The door shut behind us with a soft click that sounded like a final word. He poured himself a drink he didn't need and looked at me with a familiarity that made my skin crawl. You went to him, Marco said softly, to the vampire. I ran, I corrected, forcing steadiness. From you. Marco's gaze sharpened. You ran from safety, he said as if he believed it, from the only man who knows how this city works. I thought of Lucien's open hands, his restraint, his refusal to turn me into a bargain. I thought of Marco's watch in candlelight, my father's life treated like a negotiation chip. Well, you don't know the difference between safety and captivity, I said. For a moment, Marco's expression flickered. Something tired moved under the arrogance, like a bruise he kept hidden. You think I enjoy this? He asked quietly. You think I wanted to become a man who has to lock doors to keep what matters? I didn't answer because the truth was complicated, and he used complication like a weapon. Marco set the glass down carefully. Lucien Vale doesn't want you, he said. He wants what you are. My stomach clenched. I'm not anything. Marco smiled, but it was thinner now. That's what he wants you to believe, he said, so you walk into his arms thinking it's love. He reached into his coat and removed the watch again, placing it on the desk between us. The metal looked older than it should have, like it had survived more than time. Your father hid things in this, Marco said. He always has. I stepped forward, hands hovering. Give it to me. Marco didn't move. Tell me something first, he said. Did he tell you about your mother? My heart stuttered. Don't. Marco's eyes studied my face with the cold patience of a man looking for weak seams. She wasn't just a woman who died, Elena, he said. She was a bridge, a secret, a reason. I felt dizzy. What are you saying? Marco leaned in slightly. I'm saying your blood matters, he murmured. To him, to me, to everyone who understands what you are. My voice came out small. What I am. Marco's smile returned, satisfied. A door, he said, and doors are useful. He slid the watch toward me at last. My fingers closed around it as if it could anchor me. When I popped the back open, the folded paper was there. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was my father's handwriting, messy, rushed, desperate. Oh, Elena, if you find this, it means I failed to keep you out of the storm. Lucien Vale is not the monster they say he is. He protected your mother when no one else could. He protected me once, too. If Marco uses me to pull you back, do not mistake fear for love. Do not trade yourself for me. I would rather lose everything than see you lose yourself. The tears blurred the words. Marco watched my face change and his expression hardened. He filled your head with fairy tales, Marco snapped, and there it was, the crack in his control. He stepped closer, lowering his voice like a warning. Tomorrow night there's a charity gala at the Armitage Hotel, he said. Neutral ground, everyone important will be there. My throat tightened. Why are you telling me this? Marco's eyes gleamed. Because Lucien will come, he said. He won't be able to stay away, not when he thinks he's losing you. He reached out, not quite touching my cheek, stopping just short, like he wanted the intimacy without the consent. And when he comes, Marco whispered, you'll stand beside me and prove to him you were never his. I swallowed hard. I was never yours. Marco's smile vanished. You'll do it anyway, he said, voice flat, because your father will be sitting in the front row. My breath caught. Outside the office door, I heard the soft footstep of a guard, patient, present, reminding me I was watched even in silence. I looked down at the watch in my hand, at my father's letter, at the truth beating inside my ribs. And I realized I wasn't trapped between Marco and Lucien. I was trapped between the old version of myself that obeyed and the new one that might fight. The Armitage Hotel glittered like a promise it didn't intend to keep. Crystal chandeliers, velvet drapes, the kind of music that made people feel rich even when they weren't. Under it all, I felt the same thing I'd felt in the cathedral. A hunted stillness. Marco kept his hand at the small of my back as if he were guiding a partner, but it was a reminder more than a touch. He'd dressed me like a trophy again, red fabric and careful jewelry, as if beauty could erase bruises you couldn't see. My father sat near the front, surrounded by people who smiled politely and watched him too closely. He looked up when he saw me and gave the smallest shake of his head, begging me not to play this game. I pressed my fingers to my wrist where the watch rested under my sleeve, hidden against my skin like a second heartbeat. Then the air changed. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't a gust or a sudden silence. It was subtler than that, like the room had become aware of something it couldn't name. Lucien entered without fanfare, dressed in dark elegance that made everyone else look like they were pretending. He didn't scan the crowd like a predator. He didn't look for a fight. Oh, he looked for me. When his eyes met mine, something in my chest tightened so hard it almost hurt. Not because I belonged to him, because for the first time in a long time, someone looked at me and seemed to ask, "Are you okay?" without saying a word. Marco leaned close to my ear. "He came," he murmured, pleased, "just like I said." Lucien approached slowly, stopping at a respectful distance. His posture was controlled, but his face held a quiet strain, as if he'd walked into a room full of matches while carrying his own gasoline. "Marco," Lucien said evenly. "Your Majesty," Marco replied, almost cheerful. "Welcome to the human world. We wear our monsters in suits." Lucien's gaze flicked to my father, then back to Marco. "Release him," he said. Marco smiled. "After Elena makes her choice," he replied, loud enough that nearby guests leaned in without pretending not to. "Right here, in front of everyone." Heat rose in my face. It felt like being put on display, like my fear was entertainment. Lucien's voice softened. "Elena does not owe anyone a performance." Marco lifted his chin. "She owes me what she promised." I stepped forward before my courage could evaporate. "I promised because I was afraid," I said, voice shaking but clear. "And fear is not consent." The nearest listeners stilled. A few faces shifted, curiosity turning into discomfort. Marco's smile tightened. "Don't embarrass yourself," he murmured. Lucien didn't move closer. He didn't claim space around me. He simply spoke with a calm that felt like shelter. "Marco," Lucien said, "you built an empire by convincing yourself control is strength. It's hunger." Marco's eyes flashed. "You don't get to lecture me about hunger." Lucien nodded once, acknowledging the truth hidden inside the insult. "You're right," he said quietly. "I don't. That is why I chose restraint." It was the humility that stunned me, the way he refused to pretend he was flawless, the way he refused to win by lying. Lucien looked at me then, and his voice softened further. "If you want to leave with him tonight," he said, "I will not stop you. If you want to walk away from both of us," he added, "I will help you do that too." My breath caught. Marco stared, confused for the first time. "That's your move," he scoffed. "You're just going to let her go." Lucian's eyes didn't leave mine. "Yes," he said, "because she is not a prize, she is a person." Something in me steadied. I felt it like a spine clicking into place. I looked at Marco. "You wanted me to choose in public," I said. "Fine." The room felt too bright, too quiet. "I don't choose ownership," I said, voice rising with a strength I didn't know I had. "Not yours, not anyone's, I choose freedom." Marco's expression darkened. "Careful." I continued anyway. "And if Lucien wants me near him," I said, turning slightly toward the man who'd never once grabbed my wrist, "then it will be as an equal, not as a captive, not as a bargain." Lucien's face didn't turn triumphant. It turned relieved, as if my freedom mattered more to him than my closeness. Marco's jaw worked, rage and humiliation fighting for space. Then unexpectedly, his gaze flickered toward my father. Something softened there just for a second, like a boy inside him remembered what it felt like to lose. "Release him," I said, quieter now. "Prove you're not the monster you keep pretending you're not." The words landed harder than any insult. Marco stared at me, and for a moment he looked tired. Then he made a small gesture. One of his men stepped away from my father. My father exhaled shakily, as if he'd been holding his breath for hours. Marco's voice dropped bitter. "There," he said, "happy." I swallowed hard. "Thank you," I said, not because he deserved praise, but because I refused to become him. I refused to let hatred make me cruel. Lucian's gaze warmed with something like pride, but he kept it gentle, like he didn't want to pressure me with his feelings. Then the temperature in the room seemed to shift again. Not from Lucian, from somewhere else. A group of figures appeared at the edges of the ballroom, elegant, pale, watching with eyes that didn't soften. Their presence had the same quiet power as Lucian's, but without his warmth. Lucian's posture changed, subtle but immediate, like a shield rising. His voice was barely a whisper. "My counsel," he said, and for the first time I heard tension in it. They were not invited. One of the newcomers met Lucian's gaze with cold disappointment, then looked at me as if I were a mistake that needed correcting. "We cannot allow this," the council leader said softly, smiling without kindness. "Not after what you promised." Lucian stepped half a pace in front of me, not possessive, protective. "You will not touch her," he said, voice steady. The council leader's smile didn't move. "Then choose Lucien Vale," they murmured, "your throne or your mercy." And the room, full of humans pretending not to notice monsters, held its breath. The ballroom's music continued, thin and distant, like it was trying to pretend nothing had changed. People laughed too loudly. Glasses clinked too often. Fear always makes humans perform. Lucian faced the council with a stillness that felt like prayer. "Leave," he said to them, not loud, not dramatic, but final. The council leader's gaze slid to me again. "A human who disrupts our balance," they said softly. "A king who breaks tradition for sentiment." Lucian's eyes narrowed and his voice stayed calm. "Not sentiment," he corrected. "Conscience." Marco stood beside me, strangely quiet now. For the first time, he looked like a man watching someone else hold power without squeezing it. The council leader took a slow step forward. "If you will not enforce your law," they said, "we will." Lucian's hand lifted slightly, not toward me, but toward the space between us, an invisible line he wouldn't let them cross. "I will not let you harm her," he said. "And if we declare you unfit," the council leader asked, "if we strip your crown?" Lucian's expression softened, not in surrender, but in acceptance. "Then I will walk away," he said, and the words landed like thunder wrapped in velvet. "If the throne requires cruelty, it was never mine to keep." My chest tightened. "Lucian." He glanced back at me, and in his eyes I saw the hidden compassion that had been there since the cathedral, fully exposed now. "Elena," he said quietly, "you once said you were tired of being chosen like an object. Tonight I will not choose power over you. I will choose what is right." The council leader's smile finally cracked, turning sharp. "You would abandon your people for her." Lucian's voice did not waver. "I would protect my people from becoming you," he said. A hush spread outward, a ripple of awareness even humans could feel. My father had moved closer, standing behind me, his hand hovering near my shoulder like he wanted to lend me strength without taking my choice away. And then another twist I didn't expect. Marco spoke. "You're all very dramatic," he said, voice rougher than usual. He looked at the council leader, then at Lucien. "But if we're talking about balance," he added, "I'm the one who broke it first." Every head turned, even the council paused. Marco swallowed as if the next words cost him pride. "My mother told me vampires were monsters," he said, quieter now, "and then she died believing it. I built my life around that story." He glanced at me and the shame in his eyes was brief but real. It made it easier to justify everything. He exhaled. "But tonight I watched a king refuse to cage a woman," he said, voice tight, "and it made me wonder what kind of man I've been calling myself." The council leader's expression curdled. "Human guilt is meaningless." Lucian's gaze flicked to Marco, surprised, not trusting but witnessing. "It is not meaningless," Lucian said, and his voice held something like relief. "It is a beginning." The council leader stepped back as if they were recalculating. If you step down, they warned Lucien, you invite chaos. Lucien nodded once. Then I will leave you something better than fear, he said. He turned slightly, addressing the room, not the humans, not the vampires, but the air itself, like the city could hear him if he spoke honestly enough. There is an old rite, Lucien said, voice steady. A vow that binds a ruler's power to protection instead of domination. It costs the crown, it ends the cycle. The council leader's eyes narrowed. The knight's mercy, they hissed. Lucien's gaze drifted to me, asking without forcing. Elena, he said softly, your mother carried a bridge between our worlds. You carry it too, not as a weapon, as proof that we can be more than our worst stories. My hands trembled. What happens if we do it? I asked. Lucien's expression warmed. Then my power cannot be used to claim, he said, only to shield, and my court will be forced to live under that boundary or leave. My father stepped forward, voice shaking with emotion. Your mother would have wanted this, he said to me, not because it's easy, because it's right. Marco looked away, jaw clenched, and said the most unexpected thing of all. I'll release every hold I have, he muttered. On Raphael, on her, on anyone, he swallowed. And I'll disappear if that's what it takes to stop this war. Lucien studied him, then nodded once. Go, he said, not with vengeance, but with mercy that had teeth, and become someone you don't hate. Marco's eyes flickered, conflicted and raw. He gave a tight nod, more a surrender than an agreement, then signaled his men. They melted back, retreating like tidewater. The council leader watched Marco leave, then looked at Lucien with contempt. You're dismantling yourself, they said, for a human. Lucien's voice stayed calm. For a future, he corrected. He offered me his hand, not as a claim, but as a question. My heartbeat roared in my ears. Every part of my past screamed that hands meant traps. But Lucien's palm stayed open, waiting. I placed my hand in his. The air seemed to settle, like something restless inside the city finally found a place to rest. The chandeliers didn't dim, the room didn't collapse, the world didn't punish me for choosing myself. Lucien spoke the vow quietly, and the power in it didn't feel like domination. It felt like responsibility, heavy, honest, clean. When the rite ended, the council leader's expression had changed, not softened, but shaken. Oh, you've bound yourself, they whispered. Lucien nodded, and for the first time I saw something like peace in him. Yes, he said, so I won't become what you fear or what you are. The council leader turned away, retreating with their followers, their elegance suddenly looking like cowardice. As the tension drained, my knees weakened. Lucien steadied me without pulling me close, without turning support into possession. He held my hand like it was a promise he intended to keep. My father stood beside us, tears in his eyes, and whispered, "You're free." I looked at Lucien. What happens now? I asked. Lucien's mouth curved into the smallest, realest smile. Now, he said, we build something kinder than the stories. Outside the hotel windows, the storm had begun to break. Snow still fell, but lighter, almost gentle. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was running. I felt like I was choosing where to stand.